Two plainclothes drug squad officers were positioned to profile members of the audience to walk single file past the drug sniffer dog and the handler.
We're asking you tell me what you've got on you.
Sniffer dogs at British music festivals serve a number of functions, but it isn't necessarily to bust drugs. That's according to a detailed piece of research looking into festival security and the use of drug sniffer dogs there. A study was from a researcher called Verity Smith. She was working out of Durham University in the UK. It was published in the Journal of Policing and Society. If you want to read the whole thing, I'll put it in the description below. But she spent 250 hours observing the security procedures when people arrive at festivals. She was doing it in 8 different festivals. She observed the dog handlers, she observed the operational procedures, and she observed how things work. She also conducted interviews with people who manage these events, the security themselves, the dog handlers, and the police. Some of the people she interviewed were talking very openly about it because it was anonymous. And the festivals in the study are not referred to by their real name, they're referred to by a pseudonym. One of the aims of the research was to try and understand why sniffer dogs are increasingly deployed at festivals, even though it's quite concerning for everyone's civil liberties. And research suggests that not only are they ineffective at stopping people using drugs or bringing drugs onto the site, but they actually cause more drug-related harm at festivals and make them more dangerous than they ever needed to be. This can play out in a number of different ways. One of the main problems is that if you're creating a massive hassle for people who are bringing drugs into the site, then it encourages people to buy their drugs inside the festival rather than bringing their own, which hugely increases the risks, because in general, buying drugs inside a festival is more risky than elsewhere. Research from America, Australia, the UK has all concluded this. If we take this study from the pioneering drug checking charity The Loop, they found that for the sample that they were looking at, festival goers who brought their drugs inside the festival were more than twice as likely to be missold, either being sold a cheaper substance than the one advertised or being sold something with no drugs in at all. Now, we all know that when it comes to using drugs, knowledge is power. If you know what you're taking, you can come up with an effective strategy to minimize the harms. If you don't know what you're taking, you're going in blind. So it makes it more difficult if you don't know what you're taking. And of course, it goes without saying that if you've been buying your pingers or your molly or whatever you want to call it, your cat, from your local neighborhood plug for many years, and it's always been a consistent quality, you pretty much know what you're getting, you know what effect it's going to have on you, and that makes the risks or the potential harms much less, because those kind of dealers would be very interested in repeat custom. If you're buying off someone in a festival, they're never going to see you again, then they might just rip you off. Festivals are generally a reservoir of goodwill and fantastic people, but there is a tiny minority of dickheads, the grubby opportunists, who will take the opportunity to sell fake drugs. Sometimes you see them going through the crowd going pills, coke, cat. They're being very blatant and blasé, because even if they got caught by the undercover security or even undercover police or whatever, there's limited to no legal implications for them people because they're not actually selling drugs. One way to avoid that sort of thing is by using test kits. Today's video is sponsored by Easy Test Kits, quick, reliable and affordable drug testing kits for all your favourite party prescriptions. If you want to learn more or buy, say, an MDMA testing kit yourself, click on the description below and use my promo code SESH for a 10% discount. The other problem is when people, and it's often young, inexperienced festival goers, see the dogs become intimidated by the situation and against their better judgment take all their drugs before they go in without pacing themselves. That's what researchers call panic consumption, and it has been implicated in a number of deaths. So why are the sniffer dogs there if they don't stop drugs and they actually make the potential harms of drugs much higher? What's the point of them? Well, let's have a look at some of the findings from this researcher. So one of the interesting points that I saw from her findings was that at one of the festivals, she said that she observed a situation where before the audience members got to the point where they would be patted down and potentially walk past the sniffer dog, there was 2 plainclothes drug squad officers that were there before that point. She said, and I quote, "2 plainclothes drug squad officers were positioned to profile members of the audience to walk single file past the drug sniffer dog and the handler. Groups of teenage boys, particularly with accents from the northwest of England, appeared to have suspect status. For example, one police officer at the gate told me she had successfully profiled a teenager. That teenager was subsequently found with a grinder and a small amount of cannabis." The festival was much safer, guys. They got a grinder, they got a small amount of cannabis. Well done. Fight the good fight, guys. Smith argues that this sort of activity isn't necessarily about catching drugs, but it's a symbolic function to maintain discipline in general. The disciplinary function operates clearly. Even when no drugs are found during subsequent searches, the sniffer dogs create presumptions of guilt that the recipients must actively disprove. And that's something that I've really always been against when it comes to festival security. They're not operating under the law, they're operating under the terms and conditions of the ticket. So they dangle the carrot of the fun weekend with your friends over your head, and they say that if you don't adhere to all this sort of draconian measures, then we'll just take your ticket away. So people aren't being searched by consent, it's coercive consent. It's like, you must consent. If you don't consent, then we know we're going to send you home. You might not even have a way of getting home until Monday to get in the car with a lift or whatever. Normally, under the law of this land, you are innocent until proven guilty. But when you're going to these festivals, you're guilty unless you can prove you're innocent. Smith says that when the dogs created false positive indications, instead of the handlers or the security personnel admitting inaccuracies, they explained this away through alternative narratives, by limitations of the search process, by previous contact with drugs, and by the indication relating to another trigger. Smith argues that such interactions demonstrate how the dogs produce surveillance creep by creating a presumption of guilt, which the individual who the dog has allegedly indicated towards must disprove, and it also maintains police authority in society, regardless of the outcome of the search. In another piece of the research, we look at what a police officer says when he admits that it actually is a rubbish way of trying to catch people with drugs. Smith said, quote, "I spent time with a police officer and a dog handler operating on the re-entry gate, observing festival goers exiting, then re-entering the event with possessions and supplies from the car park. The dog handler drew my attention to a group of 6 males exiting through the gate. About half an hour later, a few of them approached the re-entry line, with one carrying a water bottle and no other visible possessions. They went past us into the festival without receiving a drug dog indication." Quote, "Why would you go back to the car just to get a water bottle?" That was what the police officer says. "It doesn't make sense. They could at least pretend they're going back for something else." Intrigued, this prompted me to ask him how he saw his role, given these suspicions. "There's only so much we can do," he reflected. "If they're all plugging, then this, the dog, isn't going to stop them getting drugs in. Even if they get searched, they will still get them in, unless they are acting very suspiciously when we talk to them. We only get the tip of the iceberg, hardly scratch the surface of it. But what can we do? If anything, this is about sending a message rather than preventing it from getting on site. The clever ones will always find ways around it, plugging on re-entry or chucking it over the fence, down where the woods are, away from the gate." And that's the point, really. It's all a waste of time. So if it's making it more dangerous, it's actually pointless. Prison's always a good analogy. If you can't stop drugs coming into a category A prison where people have literally been sort of strip searched constantly because they've lost their freedom already, then how are you going to stop it getting into a festival where you don't have the right to strip search someone? The research suggests that the dog's function isn't actually to bust drugs, but is rather a manufactured tool of control, a visible symbol of authority that sends a message to the sesheds that they must self-regulate their behaviour and discreetly minimise their visible excesses of drug use within that event space. Or the securities and authorities do have the resources to make their lives difficult. One pretty funny part of the research was when the operational staff admitted that if the drug dogs actually caught people with drugs and if they were very effective, then the festival wouldn't be able to actually operate. Quote, paradoxically, if the dogs are too effective at drug detection, they disrupt flow during peak ingress and overburden security and police resources for searches and processing. So there you go. According to this, one major function of the drug dogs is actually symbolic, to maintain law and order on the site and send out a message, basically. And the other reason that comes up now is to do with PR, and it's to do with maintaining the profits for the festival and the licensing. Quote, the significance of keeping up appearances was emphasised by the health and safety manager at one of the festivals, they called him Dan, who described the drug dogs as a PR exercise. We learn about this when the researcher interviews the health and safety manager for one of these festivals. He said that the drug detection dogs do not stop drug possession or drug use on the site or at the festival, but it does serve a function of looking good to the licensing stakeholders when a small amount of drugs are confiscated. They get photographed, they get quantified, and they get presented in licensing meetings after the festival as tangible evidence that the festival is very serious about drugs and should get their license for the next one. So they called him Dan, but it's obviously not his real name. And here's what he had to say. It's to demonstrate we are upholding the licensing objectives, doing what we said we would do in the event management plan, demonstrating that we are doing everything we can to prevent antisocial behaviour and drug use. Event professionals know that most people who go to festivals want to take drugs. If they really want to, they will get them in there and they will consume their drugs. We know that, so we are probably more focused on making it look like we are doing all we can to stop it, rather than being concerned about that happening. Really, it's a very performative dance, and everyone pretends, we all play a role on the way in and pretend that we're doing great things for the war on drugs, but whatever. If you want festivals to be safer, this is my opinion. I think that what you need to do is have a hands-off approach to personal amounts of drugs on the gate. So if someone's being caught with, a gram of ket, couple of ecstasy pills, gram of weed, you should be hands-off with that, not really look for that during the search, but you should really be concentrating on weapons. And then when you get in there, you should be allowed drug testing. People can get things tested on the site, which we used to be allowed in the UK. We're not allowed anymore because the Home Office do not allow front-of-house testing. And there should be huge educational messages. There should be a culture of education around this inside the festival. I think if you did them things, you'd go very far to making the festivals much, much safer. Another thing that came out of this was that the security described a situation to the researcher that the drug dogs maintain good PR for the festival, and it gives them something to fall back on if there is a drug death, so they're not actually blamed for it. But they shouldn't be blamed for it because they're just playing the game. They don't make the rules. Any politicians who prop up the war on drugs, they are ultimately to blame. But also the licensing people, because I've always wondered it, and this research confirms it to me, that it's the licensing conditions that force the drug dogs onto the festivals. Some of the festivals definitely would rather not have the drug dogs, but they have to in order to gain their license. Let's hear what was said about that. Richard is a pseudonym, obviously not his real name, a security consultant for major festivals, told the researcher, quote, there are two ways of looking at it. Are we doing enough to satisfy the licensing committee, and is it effective? Those are two different things. For licensing, we supply the dogs, tick, because we said we will, because the police want us to, so we use them to tick a box. Are they effective? Are the licensing committee concerned about that? Maybe not. I dare say we don't have to prove it. It's the term of the license. It shows the police and the licensing committee that as a festival, we take drugs seriously. It's effective at that. It shows that we won't sit back and do nothing. We are serious about drugs, therefore we keep our license. At one point, the researcher is at a pre-event licensing hearing, and a police officer actually says that he supports the drug dogs because he wants to stand up and tell the coroner in the event of a drug-related death that they did everything they could. And this is the misconception here, guys, because it might have been a death because of the drug dogs. So that police officer would have to stand up to the coroner and say, we might have caused this death by having the drug dogs. I feel like once everyone understands that, the drug dogs will be banned at festivals. Sarah, not real name, the licensing manager for one of the festivals, articulated this defensive logic with stark clarity. Quote, if someone dies at a festival, regardless of how much time, energy and commitment we put into harm reduction, we would still be criticised for the fact that those drugs exist in the festival. You see it time and time again. If we have dogs, we've got a defence there. Very brutally, it's as simple as that. Again, the licensing manager there doesn't understand at all the dogs may well cause more of these harms. That's what all the research shows from every country that's done research like this. So one function of the dog, as well as the stuff we've already said about maintaining general symbolic discipline on the site, is also to protect against reputational damage, to protect against regulatory problems, and to prop up the war on drugs. And this is the topsy-turvy, illogical world of drug prohibition, guys, because if everyone was looking at this logically, then having the drug dogs would create regulatory and reputational risk. I thought you guys might be interested in this study. I thought it was a fantastic piece of research. If you find these videos useful or interesting, hit the bell notification. You can also get them on Spotify, by the way, and I'll see you on the next one.